The paper trembled in Emily Carter's hands. Termination notice. Her heart pounded. The cafe she had poured her soul into for 5 years had just erased her like she was nothing. Fired. For what? For doing the right thing. Just 1 hour ago, she had been the respected manager of Oakwood Cafe. Now she stood in the biting cold, jobless, humiliated. But as she clenched the letter, she did not feel regret, only fury. It had all started with a simple act of kindness. The afternoon rush had been chaos. Coffee machines screaming, orders stacking up, impatient customers tapping their feet. Then he walked in, a man with unyielding posture, military precision in his steps, but haunted eyes, and beside him, a German shepherd. Not a pet, a lifeline. Emily knew him. Corporal Jake Lawson, a Marine who had given everything for his country and received nothing in return. His service dog, Ranger, wore a vest that warned the world, "Do not distract." But the moment he stepped up to the counter, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Sir, pets are not allowed inside." Emily's stomach dropped. Linda, her supervisor, a woman who lived by one rule: power over people. Jake's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "He is not a pet. He is a service animal." Linda crossed her arms. The room went silent. "Our policy states that only registered service animals with proper documentation are allowed," she said, her tone laced with authority. Emily felt the anger rise. Wrong, illegal, inhumane. "Linda, that is not how it works," Emily interjected. "Under the ADA, service dogs do not need documentation. He has every legal right to be here." Linda's lips curled. "I make the rules here. Either he leaves or I call security." Eyes locked. A battle without weapons. The cafe held its breath. Customers watched but stayed silent. Jake's hand curled into a fist, his breathing uneven. Ranger nudged him, sensing the shift. Emily saw it. The invisible war raging in his mind. The memories, the noise, the fear. "Number not today." Emily stepped forward. "If you make him leave, you are violating federal law." Her voice was steel. Linda smirked. "Then you can leave with him." The words hit like a gunshot. Emily stared. Fired. Just like that. She could have backed down. She could have swallowed the injustice and kept her job. But she didn't. She ripped off her name tag, slammed it on the counter, and turned to Jake. "Let's go." The door swung shut behind them. The cold air slapped her face, but she did not shiver. She was free. She had lost everything, but she had done what was right. Then her phone rang, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A deep, commanding voice. "Miss Carter, this is Colonel James Reynolds, U.S. Marine Corps. We need to meet. Now." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Colonel James Reynolds? The U.S. Marine Corps. She tightened her grip on the phone. Why would a Marine colonel want to meet her? I do not understand," she stammered. The voice on the other end was firm but calm. "Meet me at the Patriot Diner, 1 hour." Then the line went dead. Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her. Fired for doing the right thing. She glanced at Jake. He had been silent since they walked out, his fingers running through Ranger's fur, grounding himself. She turned to him. "Jake, do you have any idea what this is about?" Jake hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, and if Reynolds wants to see you, it is big." A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face, but he said nothing more. Emily had nothing left to lose. "Then let's go." The Patriot Diner was a small, old-fashioned place on the outskirts of town, known for its no-nonsense attitude and black coffee strong enough to wake the dead. When Emily and Jake walked in, the atmosphere shifted. At a corner booth sat a man who commanded the entire room without saying a word. Colonel James Reynolds, silver hair, sharp eyes that had seen war and walked out the other side. The kind of man who did not waste time. As they approached, he gestured for them to sit. Emily slid in across from him, her hands clasped tightly together. "I heard what happened at the cafe," Reynolds said, his voice low but powerful. "You stood up for one of my men when no one else did." Emily swallowed. It was the right thing to do. Reynolds nodded. And you paid the price for it. She glanced away. Yeah, I did. A beat of silence. Then Reynolds leaned forward. Emily, do you have any idea who Jake really is? Her gaze flicked to Jake. He tensed. A shadow passed over his face. Emily frowned. I know he is a Marine. I know he has been through a lot. Reynolds exhaled slowly, as if measuring his words. Jake was not just any Marine. He was part of a classified unit, the kind that does not officially exist. Emily's heart pounded. She turned to Jake, searching his face for confirmation. He said nothing, his jaw tight. Reynolds continued. He saved lives. He completed missions that shaped history. And when he came home, the country he bled for forgot him. His voice turned hard. Until today. Emily's pulse quickened. What do you mean? Reynolds locked eyes with her. Because of what you did, people are talking. People who matter. Emily could barely process what was happening. One moment, she was a cafe manager. The next, she was sitting across from a Marine colonel, talking about things that were far bigger than her. Then, Reynolds said something that made her blood turn to ice. Jake's life is in danger. And now, Emily, so is yours. Emily's stomach twisted into knots. In danger? She darted a look at Jake, but his face was unreadable, his fingers tense against Ranger's fur. What do you mean? She demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. Reynolds exhaled, his expression grim. Do you think what happened today was just about a cafe policy? About a service dog? He shook his head. That was a warning. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. A warning? From who? Reynolds glanced around the diner, his eyes scanning every exit before lowering his voice. There are people, powerful people, who do not want Jake in the public eye. And thanks to you, that is exactly where he is. The weight of his words crashed down on her. This was bigger than her job, bigger than a cafe dispute. I do not understand, Emily said. Why would anyone want to target Jake? He is just trying to live his life. Jake's knuckles whitened. They never let you just live, Reynolds nodded. Jake's unit carried out missions that never made the news. He knows things that could expose certain people. People who would rather erase him than risk the truth getting out. He met Emily's gaze. And now because you took a stand, you are on their radar too. Emily felt her entire world tilt. Just hours ago she had been making lattes. Now she was sitting across from a Marine colonel, being told she was a target. She swallowed hard. So what happens now? What am I supposed to do? Reynolds' expression darkened. You have two choices. Walk away. Pretend none of this ever happened. Hope they forget about you. The way he said it made her stomach churn, because she knew they would not forget. And the second choice? She asked. Reynolds leaned in. You fight. The word hung in the air between them. Fight. Emily looked at Jake. His walls were up, his emotions buried deep, but she could see it. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the silent war raging inside him. He had been fighting alone for too long. She thought about the cafe, about Linda's smug face, about how no one in that room had spoken up for Jake, except her. Emily straightened her spine. I did not back down today, and I am not backing down now. A flicker of something crossed Jake's face, surprise, maybe even respect. Reynolds studied her, then nodded. Good, because they are already watching. Emily stiffened. What? Reynolds tapped his phone and turned the screen toward her. A grainy security feed showed a black SUV idling across the street, parked directly outside the diner. The blood drained from her face. They were here. Jake shifted in his seat, his entire body coiled like a spring. How long? Since before you walked in, Reynolds said. They want to see what you will do next. Emily's heart pounded. And if I do nothing? Reynolds' jaw tightened. Then they will decide for you. Jake reached for his coffee, but stopped when Ranger let out a low, guttural growl. Emily turned toward the window and locked eyes with a man sitting in the SUV cold. Calculated, waiting, and then he smirked. Emily's breath hitched. The man in the SUV didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He just sat there watching, like he had all the time in the world. A slow smirk crept across his face. Not a threat, a promise. Jake shifted beside her, his muscles tense. His entire posture had changed. No longer just a man trying to get by. Now he was a soldier again. "Time's up," Reynolds muttered. "We need to move. Now." Emily's heart pounded. "Move where?" Reynolds pulled out a folder from his jacket and slid it across the table. "To them, you are just a civilian who made too much noise. But I see something else." His sharp eyes locked onto hers. "You saw an injustice and acted without hesitation. That is the kind of person we need." Emily hesitated, then opened the folder. Her pulse jumped. Inside were documents stamped with U.S. Government Confidential. Her name was listed, and below it, an offer. "You want me to work for you," she whispered. "Not just work. Train. Protect people like Jake from the ones who want them gone." Reynolds leaned forward. "You have a choice, Emily. Walk away. Go back to whatever life they let you keep. Or step up and make a real difference." Emily's hands trembled. She had spent years playing it safe, following rules. And where had that gotten her? Fired, discarded, forgotten. She looked at Jake. His walls were still up, but for the first time, there was something else there. Hope. Emily took a slow breath, her decision solidifying in her chest like steel. No more sitting down, no more backing away. She grabbed a pen and signed. Reynolds smirked. "Welcome aboard." A knock on the diner window made them all freeze. The man from the SUV was standing outside holding up a phone. The screen lit up with a single message. "Too late." And then, gunfire.